Okay, Kentucky, let's have ourselves a conversation about Amy McGrath. So Amy McGrath, she is left of center. She's got some progressive liberal ideas, but she's not a progressive. She's barely even liberal. She's definitely a Democrat, right? Definitely a neoliberal Democrat, but how progressive she actually is, that's in question. So Amy McGrath is the front runner for the Democratic Party in Kentucky to run against Mitch McConnell. The primary is May 19th, 2020. So really, Kentucky should be focused on the presidential election, and then, kind of just tip your toes, just kind of look at the Senate. Well, I don't know, maybe look into it all. But when it comes to the presidential election, that's going to happen, I guess it'd be about the same time for Kentucky. So they're going to have a primary, and the Democrats are going to vote in the primary. So I guess that actually will be their primary. Never mind. Scratch everything I just said. But May 19th, 2020 is when the Democratic primary is going to be. So on that day, you'll have to decide both of those things. Who do you want to become president? Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders? And then you have to decide whether or not you want Amy McGrath, Jimmy Osbrooks, Mike Breuer, Stephen Cox, Benny J. Smith, because there's 4 other Democrats that are already in the race. So this is Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer has pushed for Amy McGrath, and then she's going around getting all these fundraising events. So she's getting all this money from liberals all across America, because most people hate Mitch McConnell. So liberals, Democrats, a lot of Republicans all across America are willing to throw a couple bucks towards a Kentucky candidate in order to topple Mitch McConnell. And so, this Amy McGrath, she's a former lieutenant in the Marine Corps. She's raised $2 million the first day she announced her 2019-2020 campaign against Mitch McConnell. Amy McGrath has studied political science at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. She spent 20 years in the Marines. She flew 89 combat missions in the U.S. and Afghanistan. And she's also a wife, and she has 3 kids. So a wife and a mother. So she, just kind of blew Kentucky away because she had this money. She was putting all these ads out saying, you know what, I've, flew all these combat missions. I've done all these, things with airplanes, and so therefore I'm qualified to be a representative in the House of Reps for Kentucky. She's going to lose against pretty much just a hapless Andy Barr. So she couldn't even beat a congressman. She couldn't even beat a low-level Republican congressman, and yet this is the darling of the Democratic Party that they're all going to back, so she beats Mitch McConnell. So I question her progressive credentials. Now, she's going to go to Massachusetts. She's raising all this money in Massachusetts. And when she was raising money, I guess, with Chuck Schumer, all of her New England friends, but that's Matt Bevin, right? He comes from New England, too. So she's raising all this money in Massachusetts. Amy McGrath considers herself further left, further progressive than anyone in the state of Kentucky. So at one of these fundraisers, these are her exact words, she says that she is more left and progressive than anybody in the state of Kentucky. So that's not true. She is so far to the right of me, it's not even funny. She is so far right. But, she's not a socialist, right? She's not a socialist capitalist. So there, I'm a democratic socialist, so therefore, I'm already more left-wing than her. She's a right-wing capitalist through and through. So I'd love to know what these liberal progressive ideas of hers are. She has a few. So I'm going to, essentially, this is a, deep dive analysis. Not real deep dive, but a surface deep dive. A superficial deep dive, so an average analysis. So, yeah, if essentially because all of America is against Mitch McConnell, if you're in a candidate that's like sort of on the fence, you're like, should I run? I could topple, Mitch, but then I might not. Well, the rest of America, you'll get fundraising from the rest of America in order to win. So if you're on the fence, and you're saying, well, I could win, but then again, I could lose, jump in, because the rest of America will, fundraise or will finance your campaign and push you over the finish line, so they'll finance your fight to victory. So Ashley Judd, Matt Jones, there's a couple names right there. Probably George Clooney, Johnny Depp, all of the fucking Kentuckians, they could take some interest in the Kentucky people and kind of give some kind of crap of the, so Matt Jones is also like a sportscaster guy. So your bluegrass Commonwealth needs you, Ashley Judd, Matt Jones. So jump in. The rest of America will finance your campaign as long as you are able to get, some good fundraising efforts together. Amy McGrath, she had said that Donald Trump can't get anything accomplished because of his buddy Mitch McConnell. Now, it's a weird way to say that. It's like she's already campaigning in order to win those Trump Republicans over. So only if Mitch was gone, then Donald Trump could just get his legislation passed. I think it's a dumb comparison. Those who love Donald's going to love Mitch, and vice versa. You love Mitch, you're going to love Donald. No Republican's going to believe that Mitch is doing anything to hurt Donald, especially since Mitch has helped Donald accomplish whatever the fuck they've accomplished. I guess Kavanaugh appointing the 2 Supreme Court justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh. So that's aimed to courting Trump Republicans, which it's already, the primary, still the Democratic primary. So in the Democratic primary, she's already trying to court these Trump Republicans. So Donald had promised lower drug prices to bring back the jobs, and she says it's Mitch who's stopping him. Now, Mitch hasn't brought up some progressive legislation, Equal Pay Act, lowering prescription drugs, campaign finance reform, the election day turned into a federal holiday, and no new Green Deal, no Medicare for all. So Mitch McConnell has been, the Grim Reaper. He's, defined himself precisely. He is the Grim Reaper when it comes to progressive legislation, and he's proud of that. He's happy about that, right? He stopped that first black president for, only get him a one-term president, but I guess he didn't. He really didn't do that. But anyways, Donald, there was, a couple progressive things that if Mitch would have said, go ahead, would Donald have even have passed it? So, I think it's a stupid comparison, especially this early in the game, especially since you're courting Democratic voters. Fuck the Republicans. Maybe you might say, well, I might try to get a couple Republicans, but ultimately you're in the Democratic primary. Not a single Republican is going to vote for you, Amy McGrath. So just get the Democrat votes. You want to hurry up and run to the right, hurry up and be a conservative? That's a neoliberal. You're going to try to out-Republican the Republicans. You're never going to do that. So she's got some, liberal progressive views, and I hope that, she expands on those and, also thinks about a shit ton of other fucking issues that's going on, especially in Kentucky. There's, a ton of problems in Kentucky. So, yeah, okay, Mitch and Donna are essentially on the same team, right? Are you kidding me? In addition to Amy McGrath, there's at least 4 other Democrats in the race. So you got 4 other Democrats in the race for the Democratic primary. So everybody's, focused on this Amy McGrath and just, throwing a bunch of money into her campaign. Well, let's compare and contrast the other candidates. So you got Jimmy Osbrooks, you got Mike Brohier, Stephen Cox, and Benny J. Smith. You have 4 other candidates in the Democratic primary in Kentucky right now. How come you only know about Amy McGrath? Because of her awesome progressive viewpoints. She's just sweeping the nation with her plans, her progressive plans, her ideas and the legislation she's going to sign as senator, just the people all across the nation. No, she looks the part, and so people are just throwing her money because anybody's better, right? A piece of shit is better than Mitch McConnell, so we'll go ahead. Amy McGrath, I will say, is better than a piece of shit. She's left of center, not a progressive, not a liberal. She's a left of center, center neoliberal Democrat. If Andy Beshear wins the Kentucky's governor's race, then perhaps her tactic of being when they think they're being a center, they're really, really far right wing. But perhaps if Andy Beshear, right, Bill Clinton did win 2 elections, and so did Obama. So a lot of Democrats have won on a neoliberal platform. But Obama actually campaigned to the left of Hillary in the primary, so he understands politics. He understands that Democrats typically are liberal and Republicans typically are conservative. So let's look at Jimmy Osbrooks. I just looked at a couple things that they had said. So Jimmy Osbrooks, his big thing is about mental health. He just loves crazy people, and he just wants everybody to get a little, dose of some crazy pills. Just everybody can get all the, crazy pills and crazy drugs that they want. He just says he's about mental health, balanced budget, tax reform, equality. So is that a flat tax? So he's going to take away, that's anti-progressive. He says he's all about women's rights. He says he's eclectic, so he's just undefinable. Politically, you cannot define Jimmy Osbrooks. And that's bullshit. Just take the political compass test, Jimmy Osbrooks, then you'll find out exactly where your political values lie. Jimmy Osbrooks said he loves Lee Greenwood's God Bless America song. In the hills, Tennessee, across the back to Texas, see the sun and sea. Defend her still today. Ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the U.S. He loves Wendell Ford, Ted Kennedy, and Barney Frank. Those actually surprised me. He doesn't sound like a progressive hardly at all, really. What, women's rights, tax reform, equality, what the fuck? These are all code words for something. I read all of his answers, and he said it. Nothing. Just a bunch of bullshit on every one of his answers on Ballpedia. But he loves Wendell Ford, so that's an old Democrat that used to be a, I think, senator or some shit. Ted Kennedy, who's, a badass, the lion of the Senate, right? So he's the Al Franken of the 1960s, and then Barney Frank, who was a homosexual senator, and he pushed a ton of progressive legislation, not just for gay folks, but also the Frank Dodd. There was the campaign finance, so he tried to get money out of politics at one point, but he's retired now. So it tells me a little bit about Jimmy Osbrooks. I'd be interested in hearing about Amy McGrath. Does she like Barney Frank and Ted Kennedy and Wendell Ford? Is she, will she say who her Democratic heroes are, of the Democratic Party? Now let's check out Stephen Cox, okay? Stephen Cox seems like he could very well be more progressive than Amy McGrath. So everybody's just jumping in for this Amy McGrath because Chuck Schumer tapped her on the shoulder, so she's got, some credibility. He's, the biggest guy in the Senate, minority leader for the Democrats in the Senate. And so, that's, something. And then she could get all this fundraising and, do that so she could kind of find the ins and outs of the system. But check out Stephen Cox, okay? Just a few answers on a Ballpedia questionnaire seems to indicate that he's more progressive than Amy McGrath, especially on health care. Stephen Cox, the biggest issues that he wants to enforce is to get us Medicare for all. That's his main thing. And also stop, save the planet from climatocalypse. So from the climatocalypse to global warming, stop the apocalypse that is the climate change. Okay, and then reinforce ethics and transparency as a cornerstone of public service. He loves Teddy Roosevelt. Stephen Cox loves Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He loves both of the Roosevelts. He loves Randy Bryce, whoever the hell that is. And he also loves AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as a spirit for justice. So Stephen Cox is sitting there saying that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is amazing. He's not afraid to say that I like what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing. Already, Amy McGrath is sitting there saying they're too liberal on this and that. So he accomplishes good works with a will of fire. That's who Stephen Cox is. He's going to be a warrior for goodness and righteousness and justice. He likes AOC, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt. He's uncorruptible. He's an untouchable. So when Bernie Sanders gets in there, Stephen Cox is going to, help Bernie Sanders get the Kentucky people all that they need. Now, Stephen Cox used to be a dishwasher at Pizza Hut, so he knows what it's like to be, that was like the worst job he's had. Stephen Cox says on the filibuster that it's a childish bureaucratic tool that hinders progress. So Stephen Cox is a goddamn badass. Stephen Cox is a goddamn motherfucking badass. So on health care, right, he's putting it right in front of your face on ethics, transparency, AOC. He's talking about with the will of fire. That's his own words. So he's going to accomplish good works with the will of fire. He says he's uncorruptible. He's just going to do what's best for the people. He's not going to take all that damn money. He's going to do what's best for the people. Now, there's a low voter turnout rate in Kentucky, so the Democrats need an exciting candidate who can energize the Democratic base and have a progressive platform is the simplest, easiest, and best way. Good policy is good politics. Just do what's best for the people. That's the best policy. Whatever is best for, the most utilitarian approach. Whatever can make the bulk of the people, that happiest and most prosperous. Do that. That's what we do. So you need an exciting candidate who can get the base and also energize new voters to come into the system. So Stephen Cox could do that. Stephen Cox already has an exciting platform and exciting ideas. So Stephen Cox could just go around, going to interview, talking to newspaper people and just saying, this is who I am. If you want to call me up and ask me questions, don't hesitate to do so. There's a low voter turnout rate in Kentucky, so you need somebody who's going to bring that energy back. And isn't that really just good politics? Boris Johnson is right. You want somebody energetic and somebody who's like, come on, come on, Kentucky, we can do this. Come on, America, we can do this. So you want somebody to, inspire people. It's not just about what they're going to do, but it's about what they can get all of us to accomplish together. There's some speculation that others might run. Mitch McConnell will run against a Republican challenger, C. Wesley Morgan, whoever that is, and McGrath was heavily recruited by Chuck Schumer. She had beat Jim Gray, who the Kentucky Democratic establishment had backed in the House congressional race, and she beat him. And that's somewhat impressive. Jim Gray was like big progressive gay mayor of Lexington. So the gay mayor of Lexington ran, and he was, adored by the Kentucky Democratic establishment. And yet Amy McGrath came out of, right field and was able to, sweep the fences. I don't know, sweep the base. I don't know. The metaphor was fucked as soon as, but she basically come out of nowhere, right? She came out of nowhere and beat Jim Gray. So that's, interesting. The Democrats in Kentucky thought that Amy McGrath was better than Jim Gray. Now, there's a ton of things that are bad about Amy McGrath, and I'm going to get to those coming up.